Hello, everyone. I wanted to first thank you all for joining us today. My name is Makayla Jordan, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a field assistant for Students Demand Action. So, throughout Black History Month, every Town for Gun Safety will be engaged in conversations with some leading voices in the gun violence prevention movement who are running for office or participating in the electoral process. We invite you to join us for what will be a series of great discussions taking place each week. And that brings me to the special guest for this week's conversation, Jaheem McLaurin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaheem McLaurin. So it's super excited to be on the call with you all. Thank y'all so much for giving us this opportunity, and really looking forward to an engaging conversation. So thanks again, Makayla.
Awesome. Jaheem, you've run for office before, so I know you're used to doing this. For people watching who may not be familiar with you, introduce yourself and talk about who you are.
Yes, so my name is Jaheem McLaurin, born and raised from Bennettsville, South Carolina. Um, uh, Really was engaged there and involved in the community from Boy Scouts, been a volunteer firefighter, to volunteer at civic and political and social issues. I've always been someone that has just really been a servant in the community and helping the most vulnerable. I went to the University of South Carolina with got my undergrad degree from there, and currently I now work with EDF Action, advocating for climate and clean energy and environmental justice initiatives. But one thing I always like to say that even through all of that, someone I always like to come back to and relate to is the people in the community because that's what's most important. And that's why I'm super excited to be on the call.
Awesome. Whether gun violence prevention or climate change, it's been really great to see other young leaders like you getting involved. And every town is trying to help young change makers who want to get involved with elections with the recent launch of our Demand a Seat Students Edition program. But we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm curious, what motivated you to run for office back in 2022 for city council, and what motivates you to stay involved in politics?
Yeah, so what motivated me to run for office in 2022 was really I wanted change in my community. I knew that if I didn't step up and lead, no one else would. I got tired of not only seeing the applauded buildings, but also just to know tourism and parks and recreation for our kids. The gun violence that was plaguing our communities, especially our Black and Brown communities, but also just the opportunity to have someone who looks like a young person on. I knew that there was going to be pressures and mounters up against me, up against the establishment, but I was determined to make a difference. What motivates me to stay in politics is really um, this is such a pivotal time in our country, but also a pivotal time in our life as young people, where we're not only seeing record number of young people showing up to vote, but also um, we have elected leaders that can act on the issues that we care about, such as student loan forgiveness, such as gun violence prevention, such as the climate crisis, and we have to have young people in politics that can not only advocate but also work to elect the folks that are going to advocate for us. And even still, my race was 10 votes away. And so I know the power of organizing. The power of organizing is key whenever you want to get your message across. And so even still, I would tell young people to run for office.
Awesome. Awesome advice. I'm sure, like myself and other people watching, you don't know what all goes into running for office until you decide to actually do it. What's one or two things you discovered about running for office that completely took you by surprise?
The most important, I guess, the most surprising things, rather, that took me by surprise was you must have fundraising. And I learned that in the middle of my campaign that I need to be scheduling in some call time. And so campaigns don't run off of $3. Things cost signs, um, phone texts, shirts, stickers, uh, ads in newspaper, all of that costs, right? And so you had to dedicate time to calling potential donors, calling up your family and friends, calling up your old classmates, asking them for even a dollar. A dollar goes a long way in a campaign. And so I think that was one of the most surprising things, just how things add up and the amount of money that we did spend on our campaign. But I will say that it was well worth it. But believe that was one of the most surprising things running for office is you got to have that fundraising and you got to have funding to run for office, especially being at the time being a young college student and not have a full time job, not having an employer amount of savings saved up to do something of that nature. So,
Yeah, community is super important in fundraising and organizing. But let's do a deeper dive in how you got involved in your community. How did you get involved with your local Students Demand Action chapter? And how did gun violence play a role in your decision to run for office?
yeah, so we currently do not have a students demand chapter in at my local community at my local uh, at this college I attended. But I will say that gun violence prevention and advocating for stricter gun laws have been uh, a number one priority for me, not only as an advocate but also as a candidate. That was one of my issues is making sure that we're protecting and serving our community, making sure that we are looking at those red flags laws, making sure that we're looking at ways so we can reduce repeat criminals from having guns in their hands, right? And so it's always been an issue of mine. I will say that even supporting our public safety and supporting our police officers and make sure they have the resources they need, such as mental health, such as make sure they have the manpower. You know, we was operating a sheriff's office with only two deputies to patrol a county of 25,000 people. And so that was not unsafe for the deputies, but also that was unsafe for our community, right? And so one thing that I am proud to say is that even though I did not particularly win my race, I do believe that I won in public safety because after that race, not only did we get a newly appointed sheriff for our community, but now we have up towards 5 deputies per shift patrolling our community. Uh, Throughout the county. And so I think that's a big win for a small rural county such as Marlboro County. But like I said, one of the things I will say is that gun violence have always been and always will be a number one priority. We know that guns are the number one killer for young people in this country, and that is not okay, right? And so we have to continue to advocate. We have to continue to not only pressure our local elected officials, but our state elected officials, but also our federal elected officials to pass common sense gun safety legislation. And one thing I will say, just to throw this in, that I am proud that the Biden administration has been so keen on this issue with the most significant gun safety legislation in 30 years, and also the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And so I credit the Biden administration for all they have done in this regard.
Amazing. I've mentioned it a little bit already, but you're a part of a new program recently launched by Everytown Victory Fund, Demand a Seat Students Edition. Talk a little bit about what that program is and what it's like to be a part of the inaugural group.
The Students Demand Edition gun safety legislation program was really an opportunity for young folks that had interest in running for office, interested in working with gun safety candidates to come to this training session and get the skills and tools they needed to not only successfully run campaigns, but also run as gun safety candidates. And so we dive deep into not only fundraising, but also field organizing. We dived into the administrative side of things with the campaign, but we also dived into a few details and key components you can point out in your particular community, and also how to build crafting a message around gun safety legislation. So it was really an incredible opportunity, and I'm really glad that I was able to attend.
This year, Everytown is amplifying the legacy of great work that Black gun violence prevention advocates have been doing for decades. Can you talk about how that long legacy influences you and the work that you've been doing in your community as a gun violence prevention advocate yourself? And who are those people that influence you in the work that you do? I mentioned it already, but you're a part of a new program recently launched by Everytown Victory Fund, Demand a Seat Students Edition. Talk a little bit about what that program is and what it's like to be a part of the inaugural group.
Yeah, Makayla. So the Students Demand Program Edition was a program for young people that have interest in running for office on gun safety legislation.
It's okay. We can do it again. I swear they cut and chop this like stuff up anyways. You're good. Like let me know when you have like a good feel for what you want to say.
Cool. I'm ready. Let's go.
So I mentioned it already, but you're a part of a new program recently launched by Everytown Victory Fund, Demand a Seat Students Edition. Talk about what the program is and what it's like to be a part of the inaugural group.
Yeah, so the Students Demand Edition program was an opportunity for young folks that had interest in running as gun safety candidates, and then also running on campaigns that are running for gun safety legislation. An opportunity to come and learn the tools and resources to not only run campaigns but also uh, run as run as a candidate themselves. It was an opportunity for them to not only hear from key folks in our country, from Maxwell Frost in Florida to folks across the United States. We had folks from Colorado State House that we heard from, and so it was just really an opportunity to not only hear from experts in the field on gun safety legislation and gun sense candidates, but also an opportunity to figure out how do you do messaging for a campaign, how do you fundraise for a campaign, how do you talk about your why and why does this matter to you, why you need to buy in folks in regards of gun safety legislation and gun sense in our community. It also was an opportunity to get to know fellow folks in across the country that is fighting for the same thing you fight for, and I think that was one of the most profound impacts it had on me. Just not only hearing the stories of other young folks and not only from survivors, but also folks that are just supporters of the movement. It was really moving to hear their stories. I recall being in a group with a few of my fellow cohort members, and we did a project. We had to basically come up with our own campaign, the funding, the messaging, and we talked a lot about how in the Sunrise City of Colorado and how uh, gun violence is plaguing their community, especially as it relates to young people, and the plan that we would have come up with if we were to be elected on city council, which was funding for the police department, which was community oriented programs for the youth, which was making sure that the folks that had guns in their hands did not repeat criminals. And so I think it was a really great opportunity for not only first time folks that are just even exposed to a campaign, but also for the seasoned folks such as myself that has run a campaign before. But it's always great to hear from other experts, but also to refresh in your memory on some of the things that I used to do. So I will say it was a complete honor and a pleasure to be a part of the inaugural group. I'm really looking forward to everything that everyone in the group is going to do. And I'm super grateful for Students Demand for hosting this inaugural uh, training session.
So, this year, Everytown is amplifying the legacy of the great work that Black gun violence prevention advocates have been doing for decades. Can you talk about how that long legacy has influenced you and the work that you do in your community as a GVP advocate yourself? And who are those people that influence you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely has had a profound impact on my life for sure. Not only just uplifting folks that have been so long silenced, abandoned, neglected. It really does mean a lot that Everytown and Students Demand are really taking the opportunity to uplift the folks that are doing the hard work and the necessary work in the community. And so I will say that folks such as Maxwell Frost out of Florida, I keep bringing his name up because he has been such a proponent, and also he was one of the first to propose the bill for the Office of Gun Violence, Federal Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And so him, we have folks in South Carolina, such as Representative Pat Henneken that has been signing on and wanting to press our supermajority Republican state house to pass gun safety legislation. We've even seen this in the local level, right, where city councils are starting to step up and take the charge on gun safety legislation. Because not only is this impacting communities of color, but also this is impacting cities nationwide, right? And it's starting to become a problem whenever we think about economic development. You think about just the getting new citizens and new businesses to move into an area when they see that this community is plagued by gun violence. They do not want to go there because they feel as though their employees, their businesses is not going to be safe, right? And so we're seeing this on the local level that local municipalities are starting to step up and take charge on passing gun safety ordinances and making sure that their police departments and their communities have what they need to feel safe and be safe in their communities. And so I will say that for Evertown and Students Demand to initiate this opportunity to uplift the voices of folks that have been long supporters of the GWP is such an incredible testament to their commitment to supporting vulnerable communities in this fight to end gun violence in this country.
Awesome. Shifting the focus back to you, I'm curious, and I'm sure other people watching now are curious. Would you run for office again?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said at the very beginning, I would encourage all you people to run for office. You know, you never know the amount of folks, and I'm just going to be transparent here, the amount of seasoned elderly folks that supported our campaign and donated to our campaign and said, maybe I may not be able to get out there and door knock with you, but I'm going to donate $5. I'm going to donate $10, $15, $20 to your campaign because I believe in young people. I believe in your message. I believe in your message of hope and prosperity. And so I encourage all young people to do it nervous, do it scared, do it without money, do it because what you're doing is not only startling up the establishment, but it's also making a statement in your community that we're tired of the status quo and we won't change. And we're going to demand change.
So, on to my last question. I know you've been giving young people advice throughout this whole talk. There are lots of folks watching, including other young leaders who might want to run for office. So, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, as I just mentioned, do it nervous, do it scared, do it without money. One thing I will say is that you never know what this is going to lead you with running for office. So many people watch you, or rather, whenever you run for office, not only are you putting a public statement out there that you're willing to be a servant to your community, but also you're saying that I'm willing to expose my public and private life to to the commitment of serving my community. And so my advice to young people would simply be just do it, you know, demand a seat. And I think that was another part of the strategy of the Students Demand Evertown program. It was really, if they don't want to offer you a seat at the table, you have to demand a seat. You have to force your way through the brick wall. And so while we continue to shatter the glass everywhere else, with all of the historical making that we've made in this country so far, it is time for young people to demand a seat. And we know, I mean, the statistics tell us that there's nowhere near the median age for young people in not only local elected office, state elected office, but also on the federal elected office. And so we have to have young people in office that are going to be around to see some of those changes that they're actually making, right? And I just hope that young people realize their power and their voice is important, especially in this important time in our country. And so whether you have zero people supporting you or whether you have 10,000 people supporting you, believe in yourself and do what it takes to win. And even if you don't win the first time, know that you won because you stood up to the test and you stood up to the status quo. And that is a win in itself.
Thank you so much, Jaheem, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. If you're interested in learning more about Demand a Seat Students Edition, go to everytown.org/Demand a Seat Students Edition. Be sure to join us for next week's conversation with Florida State Representative Ben